Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to answer a little bit of a question that somebody was asking in the comments, but also is just, I think, an interesting conversation. And this is the subject of if I was to start up an office or recommend some place to start an office anywhere in the world, where would that be and why? So I'm going to go through that. Lots of people obviously have location independent workers, but sometimes there's something to be said for having a real office, real people come together, etc. And so I'm going to go through some of the considerations that I would look at in those situations and where you might like to set something up if you're looking. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button, nail the notification bell. Really appreciate your support. Thank you for subscribing. If you like the video, go back and check out some of our others. We produce great content for you every single day. And if you're interested in help with international structuring for yourself personally or your business, residencies, citizenships, forming companies, international tax planning, paying the lowest legal amount of tax possible, etc., please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com, and send us a message through there. Okay, so I think it's an interesting question just to think of, all right, if you're going to, what would be the factors that you would want to consider? And for me, there's a few of them. One is access to talent. One is cost of the talent. One is taxes, of course. One of them is kind of ease of doing business, right? Regulations, etc. And then, of course, the cost of talent. And when I think about these things, I can kind of run through and identify that, okay, well, I'm not going to go to a place that's got high wages. I think that's, unless you have a really specific reason to be there, which is usually access to capital or very specific talent, it doesn't really make much sense, right? If I can get the same or better work done for 1/5 the cost, why would I? Number two, some of those places often have terrible regulations, right? So a good example of this is Netherlands, where it's virtually impossible to fire people, right? It's kind of a not funny joke that people will throw around. So rules out Western Europe, typically rules out Southern Europe. I think we want to pay attention to culture somewhat in here. We also want to pay attention to infrastructure. And so for me, the two places that stand out the most, again, a little bit of bias on my background, so it would be a little bit different if you spoke some different languages and things like this. But the two places that I would look at most immediately are Romania and Malaysia, okay? So let's talk about each of those in turn. So Romania, what are you competing with? I mean, like I said, you kind of rule out the expensive Western European countries, you rule out Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, etc., right? And you say, okay, well, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with Africa. I find that infrastructure is just not there in Africa. Actually, the taxes typically aren't that good. It's just not that great a place to do business yet, okay? So Africa, although I think hiring people in Africa remotely is great, actually going and having an office there, not so excited. Latin America, similar sort of deal. Generally speaking, I find the infrastructure is a little bit worse. You of course have the same language barriers. You sometimes can be okay, there can be some good talent there for sure. Wages can be pretty competitive there. Great. So Latin America, I certainly wouldn't rule out Latin America. I think there's some areas of Latin America that can be pretty good. That being said, trying to balance out this tax and these other things, that's a little bit trickier, right? Then we have Asia. We're going to talk about Asia later because we have Malaysia, so I'll circle around to that. And so this basically leaves us with kind of the Middle East, Eastern Europe, etc., right? And here we can kind of run down. Estonia is a little too expensive, doesn't have good labor markets. Same thing, Latvia, Lithuania. Belarus is a little far removed, not quite there. I'm concerned about kind of the regulations, corruption, etc. in Russia. So having a large operation with offices, etc. in Russia, although I think that it's a big labor market, there's tons of talent, there's lots of things going on there that are good. There are some risk factors that I think just kind of lean away from there. What about some other places? We could go down to look at the Balkans, right? So certainly Greece, crazy, bad regulations, high taxes, etc. It's off. Albania, not developed enough, etc. Kind of some concerns in that regard. Same thing with Macedonia. Also really small populations. Same thing with if you look at Montenegro. Serbia, Serbia and Bosnia, I love employing people in. I think they're fantastic places to get people, but in terms of kind of ease of doing business, etc., and kind of the consequences of being located there versus passporting in, not so good. So, most of the people on our team are from Serbia. Great, we love people in Serbia, it's fantastic, but it's much more trouble if you actually are based there. And so not really what I would choose as my top choice. What about Bulgaria? So Bulgaria is very competitive with Romania, and some people might kind of say it's similar. For me, there's two key reasons why Romania wins out over Bulgaria. Number one is simply because it's a larger population base. You've got basically like 5 million, 6 million people in Bulgaria, and this means that your access to talent is just smaller. By contrast, it's 20 million, so about 4 times greater in Romania. So you just have more people to choose from. That's better, okay? At the same time, the rules around socials, etc., are better in Romania than they are in Bulgaria. You're going to get low-cost office space, etc. That's great. Moldova would be too small. Georgia, again, too small. Isn't a good access to talent there. Once you start getting too far out into the Caucasus, then you start dealing with too much Russian speaking, things like this. So, and lack of kind of financial infrastructure, things that allow you to kind of connect to the rest of the world. It's difficult to fly in and out, etc. So to me, setting up in Romania is really good. I guess the last place you can compare to that could be popular is Ukraine. And to me, it's just a corruption thing in Ukraine that is just not quite there, even though fantastic, large talent pool, again, competitive in terms of pricing, etc. I would err on the side of Romania over Ukraine personally. So that's that. Going to Asia, obviously it's really popular to employ people in the Philippines, and I think remotely that's great. To do it as an actual office there's a bunch of problems that you start to encounter. So I have some clients who have offices there and end up getting sued and all kinds of different complexities that don't really want to deal with that. Same thing, bureaucracy in Thailand, Indonesia, no thank you, not interested. Vietnam kind of speaks for itself to some extent. Cambodia, not quite there yet. To me, India is like the regulations are not good, the taxes are not good, etc. So let's put that one aside. Hong Kong and Singapore, too expensive. Same thing with Korea, Japan, not reasonable options. China, difficult to do business in for a foreigner, so it doesn't really make so much sense. This leaves me with Malaysia, and I mean, I love Malaysia. Malaysia is just fantastic. Again, you've got a population of about 20 million people. You have a blend of cultures, which is great. You can get kind of the Chinese work ethic and the Chinese Malays that, that can be really effective. You have a little bit more Western culture in the sense of, English speaking, etc. So that's great. The tax rules are pretty decent, and so that's also pretty helpful. Wages are not as low as you would get in some place like Philippines, etc. But I think it's a reasonable blend, right? Whether you're, a few $100s a month in difference isn't going to make that big a difference to you. And it's pretty well connected. Anything that you need that you don't have in Malaysia, Singapore is right there, very accessible. And so it kind of allows you to get in and out really effectively. So if you're thinking about starting up an office, I think that's great. It's also really good that it's very cheap for office space. So I think bang for the buck, like what is the quality that you're getting for the price that you're paying? Those are probably the two best options. And that's kind of factoring in taxes, it's factoring in cost of labor, it's factoring in regulations, it's factoring in ease of doing business, it's factoring in quality of infrastructure, it's factoring in cost of like physical office space, etc. So I hope that helps. Would love to hear if you guys have other opinions, where it is that you think are great places to set up an office and have a regular staff and run normal operations from. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If not, please let me know why. Hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends. Really appreciate your support in working to grow the channel. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.